This song is a song called Best World by the band The Sextants, which is a band that I used to be in. I was the drummer. And so the drums that you hear here are me from quite a long time ago. This is from around 1991, 1990. So I'm going to play you what I have going for a mix right now. There's no mix of this. There is a mix that's out there in the world. I did it a while ago, and it utilized the techniques I had at the time, and it's just not that great. It needs to be replaced. So, fortunately, this was transferred in from 2-inch tape long ago, and I've had these files for some time. So I pulled it back up, not only for this course, but also to remix it in general. So what you're about to hear is really a mix in progress. Let's unfold all the folders, and I'll show you all my cards here. And obviously, we're just going to concentrate on the drums, but I'm going to just kind of reveal everything here so you can see it. And let's see, the song starts here with the guitars. Yeah, let's take a listen, see where we're at this moment, and then I'll strip it all back and tell you what's going on. So it goes around like that a couple times, and then I'm going to bring you over here where it has kind of a breakdown to an acoustic type session. Everything kind of chills out.
Closed my eyes and saw her clad in seashells, washing her blonde shore. Turn to glass shaded, save your blood, holy glow, choose a stone.
Okay, so that is the lay of the land, essentially. Song has a couple different scenes there of loud and then, totally mellow and acoustic. So let's kind of hide everything away a bit so we can clear the decks and we can just take a listen to the drums. In Pro Tools, in this current version that I'm running, you can fold everything up into these nice and nifty folders, and I'm really liking that. So let's do that. Let's fold the bass up. And now we just have the drums. And we can solo the drums like that. There we go. Let's just play the drums as I have them ready to go right now with samples and all. And then we'll discuss. Okay, so I think you get the idea. And the breakdown section is pretty mellow. Little cymbal overdub there. Okay, and then we get back into it. So let's start by stripping back everything that we've got going on here. And we'll just highlight all of these tracks right here. And we'll hit all of those, and those in one shot. There we go. And let's turn off the samples and let's take a listen to the raw tracks. I should point out, just to keep you fully informed here. So all of the tracks are bussed over to some pretty simple arrangement in the bus area. There's a kick snare bus, just to give me a little more kick and snare if I need it. There's a drums 1 bus. That's just a basic mix of everything except the toms. Drums 2 is got a Fatso Junior on it, which we'll go over all this in a bit, but I just wanted you to know the routing of it. And the toms are on a separate bus. So the drums are represented over here by these 4 buses. And then that all goes into the stereo bus, which I'm not going to get into here too much, but some basic compression just to kind of make sure things are not getting out of hand on the buses. And there is clearly a mix here that's going on, but we're going to kind of hide that away for now and not get too deep into that. All right, well, let's take a listen to the drums originally with no plugins or samples. And I'm just going to start right here at the top, right after the stick clicks. And I'll just solo these. Here's your kick, or my kick, snare, hi-hat. Now, the toms, I have to restore this back to where it was at originally. You'll see that these toms say clean. I ran these toms through a process I'm just now trying, and this is the first session I've actually done it on. I'm going to go over to this right here. This is called Drumatom. This is from Acusonus, I think that's how you say it. Essentially, you drop your tom files here or select them, and through a pretty simple process, you can minimize the bleed that comes into the mics themselves. And I made this playlist here so we could hear what the original sounded like. I think that actually this might be the original, even though that other one said original. Let's go to here and go to here. Okay, let's solo these toms. So you can obviously hear the rumbling, the resonances of the toms themselves. Now, there's a little timbali-like sound that happens there, and that was a snare drum off to the side with no bottom head and no snares, and just tuned up really high, like a timbali, and that wasn't mic'd independently of everything, so that kind of bleeds through on everything else, and it primarily is dependent on the overheads to make sure it's represented. So let's hear this little build here. This drum set was kind of a low-cost Tama drum set. It was a Tama Swing Star. That was the thing of the day. I got it in, I think, the 8th grade. And this is 91 or 90, so I'm 20 or 21. So obviously I held on to that drum set for a while. Not the greatest drum set, but, you know, it's what I had, and that's what we used. So back to the toms. We'll leave them for now. We'll come back and we'll revisit the tracks as they've been cleaned up by the Drumatom program. So let's go to the overheads. Just beating the hell out of that hi-hat. There's that timbali-like snare thing. So the only other things on here is there's a tambourine overdub right here, right? And then there's the cymbal overdub that we heard as well. All right, so let's go back to the toms as a starting point of trying to, get this into shape. So these tones, they're not horrible, although they're not that great. So I felt like this really needed some help to bring it into the 21st century. Now we have the clean toms, and after that process with the Drumatom, like here's the rack tom. Right? Here's what it sounded like before, just to remind you. That is just insane what that can do. That's really great. Let's go back to the clean. It just got rid of all the cymbal bleed. You can still hear the kick drum. Let's go over to the other two toms as well. And we'll just take it from, right here. This is an option for you if you don't necessarily want to get rid of these resonances and this bleed that takes place. In some cases, I've eliminated bleed by just chopping everything out by, finding the hits, separating them, and then muting everything around it. In this case, I'm trying this out to see if this works and if these resonances get in the way of what I'm trying to accomplish. And so far, I'm pretty happy with it. And I'm gonna stick with it, especially for you for right now in this course. Yeah, we'll go with that. All right, so that's our toms. So I didn't have to go through and chop that up at all. Let's take a look at our kick drum. That's a great starting point, and that is a kick drum that I would keep. And in fact, I did keep it. And you'll notice there's a lot of the stock Avid EQs up here on all these. And I put those there just kind of as a quick utility type thing to flip phase, which I can do here, or throw in a high pass or low pass filter, or do, just grab a frequency and throw it around to find a problem or solve a frequency issue. In this case, I'm not doing anything. For right now, I'm going to keep it there because you never know, that could change. Now, I want to keep this kick consistent. That is a pretty regular pattern there. My foot's getting tired just listening to it. Now, that's a much younger foot playing that than the ears that are listening to it now, if you catch my drift there. That was a much younger me doing that pattern. So by throwing the Massey 2007 limiter on there, I can kind of set the level, and let's experiment with that for a second. By turning this threshold down, I can kind of smooth that out, any inconsistencies that might be there. But I also feel like we're going to need a sample. And the sample, I'll turn that EQ off for now. The sample I'm going to use is going to be this Gretsch sample. And this is a sample from the Blackbird drum pack. One of my favorite drum packs. I use it quite a bit. If you watch the previous chapter where I explain how the routing works, you're going to be fine and you'll understand that. But I'll just kind of quickly run through it. Basically, I'm sending the signal to this track, this aux track called cam, which is my short for kick sample. And Sam is snare sample. Those are my short names to remind me. Plus, they fit really well here in the window. So I'm sending the signal to the left channel of the trigger plug-in here. Anything sent to the right gets suppressed if you turn up the suppressor here. So in this case, I'm sending the kick and I'm suppressing the snare. So the sound that I get is this, and I'm going to unsolo the regular kick so you can hear the sample. And you'll notice that I've turned most of these faders down. There's a little bit of a double kick there we'll have to solve. And the reason is because I just want kind of a dry sound there. And you'll notice in some of those missed triggers that we're getting, we're going to have to take this retrigger time and move it up. There we go. And I'm going to change that detail to also further eliminate any potential issues there. And I'm also going to turn these sends on. These are coming from the snare drum. So I'm sending the snare drum down here, right here, to the right channel, and that gets suppressed. And then the kick is going to the right channel of the snare drum trigger, which we'll get into in a second. And the kick drum is being suppressed there. But in this case, for the kick, once again, left channel into the trigger, triggers the kick sample, and the snare drum being fed to it from over here is getting suppressed so that we don't get any snare bleed. And it sounds like this in combination with the other kick. Now, if I just went with the original kick, that just gives us a little bit extra. And I'm throwing an EQ on there to give it a little bit of dip here in the mids and a little bit of boost here in the highs. So that sounds like this. Let's turn it off. And with the EQ, also a high pass filter there at 38 Hertz. And there's our kick. Now, what about our snare? Not the greatest snare in the world. Let's turn this EQ on. Yeah, that snare it's too much hi-hat bleed for it to stand on its own. It needs help. So even if that EQ only helps it so much. So let's bring in a sample, and here we go. Once again, trigger. What snare am I using? Okay, once again, it's a Blackbird snare. I recognize that name. And you'll notice the phase is flipped. You can do that right here on all of these because I think the snare, well, if I've got it like that, that means the snare sample was out of phase with the original snare. So let's blend them together. Let's see what we get. And many of you might say, wow, that's quite a lot of reverb or in this case, chamber, and quite a change. But keep in mind, there's a lot of bass and a lot of guitar and a lot of vocal that we got to get through. It's like a wall of sound that we have to penetrate. So let's put the kick and the snare together. And to me, that's a pretty good match. You know, sometimes you can have a snare that might not sound like it works with the kick or vice versa. In this case, I think this is working. Moving on, let's check out what I did to the hi-hat. Now the hi-hat sounds like, yeah, wow, okay. That could get unpleasant after a period of time. So we high pass it. We get rid of all that bottom from like 103 Hertz down. And that helps with not only the rumble of the hi-hat itself, which a little bit of rumble can exist there when you have a mic really close to a hi-hat like that, but it also helps get rid of that kick bleed. And I know rumble coming from a hi-hat, but you'd be amazed at the rumble that you can get. Maybe it's from surrounding toms and the kick drum, but there's some extra stuff being picked up there.